If you're thinking about taking on a transom, if your deck is soft and needs replacement, this is the video you're gonna wanna watch. We're at FGCI today and we're talking about everything core material. Transoms, poured transom, composite board transom, marine grade plywood transom, core material for your deck, honeycomb, K-cell, PVC foam board, Divinycell, stringer system, foam stringers, composite stringers. We're covering it all. Laz is gonna do a walkthrough with us. He's gonna give us all the information that you're gonna need to do these types of projects yourself. This video is packed with info from a very knowledgeable source. You're not gonna wanna miss it. We're looking at coring material today. As you guys know, we're doing the transom on the Zebra Skiff and we're doing the transom on the Seacraft. And we're also doing the floor on both. We're picking out exactly what we're gonna use for both projects. So everything today is about coring material. Let's go. Let's go see what you got. So Laz, like, when we're talking coring material, what does that mean? It's like, why do we need a coring material? Why can't we just make stuff out of like straight fiberglass?
You get, thickness is one issue. Also, you get a better strength. You get tensile strength. You get core strength. That's what it is. It's actually a core. So we have several different makes and models of coring these days. Really brought the industry to come together and come up with something good. What you're looking at here is a polyurethane foam board, and it comes in different densities. It starts off at a 2-pound density, which is really, really light. Almost you can puncture it. Easy to shape, easy to form. Not really used for structural, but for enhancing a piece that you need to form. It goes all the way up to almost 4 inches thick. Wow. Yep, and different densities of 4, 6, and 8-pound density boards.
Let's say you have the transom like I'm doing, right, on both boats. You have the decks, okay?
Correct.
You have bulkheads, right? Where else would you use these types of coring materials? Maybe like cabinets, if you want to make cabinets?
If you want to make cabinets, if you're adding a cooler, you want to make a cooler in the boat, or you have a certain area that you want to form and build something out of, this is a great piece of core to use because it's easy to form.
And I notice here, so this one's scored, right?
Scrimmed and scored. The scoring, all it is the scrim is this part. The scoring is this part. So it's actually cut, easy to form.
So like if you want to make a live well or something.
You want to make a live well, or
a corner box. Or
and you need to shape it into a certain form. This is actually a really good coring for that.
And this is called?
This is called a diab PVC blend. And it's not 100% polyurethane. It has PVC blends into it, creating a porous, which lets the resin soak in and have some kind of adhering to it, so that there's a great bond.
And you can use epoxy, and you can use polyester resins with both.
Yes.
Okay, cool. And then I noticed you guys have this honeycomb material.
Yep.
What's this thing called?
This is well, a lot of people do know it by honeycomb. You know what? I got a scrim and scored one. Come over here.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
And you can use that for what? Same thing, decks and stuff?
Same thing. The only thing, it doesn't have good screw retention.
Got it. Right.
It doesn't have screw retention because when you laminate a honeycomb and you try to screw something into it, well, there's nothing in there grabbing it.
It's empty.
It's empty. So, but it is a great alternative to a light floor. If you're making a deck, it actually works really good.
Does this go by the name Nitacore, or is that a different brand?
Nitacore is the manufacturer of it right now. It's actually carbon core.
Carbon core?
Yeah, carbon core.
Cool.
Yeah, so the carbon core is the manufacturer. It used to be honeycomb and then Nitacore, and now it's carbon core.
Cool.
But it's still the same manufacturer, same coming out of the same plant, just different names.
So let's start with the transom, since I'm doing both transoms.
Right.
Now we'll talk about like for the regular DIY person.
Right.
If I'm doing a transom on a boat, what type of coring material do I need for a transom? Most boats, at least the older ones, came with marine grade plywood, right?
Yeah.
All right. I've had they rot.
They rot. They don't last.
They don't last.
So the biggest alternative to a wood transom, and when you're replacing it, it is a K-cell board.
Now people know it as Coosa board, right? Is this just brands?
It's just brands. There's Coosa, there's Gator boards, there's Penske boards, and K-cell. K-cell is the main line that we carry. They're pretty much all made in the same formula. They all have fiberglass integrated into the part itself. You know, depending on the size of the boat, depending on the length of the boat and how many motors it's got. If it's a big heavy motor, you know, you definitely want to replace it with something that has a 25-pound density.
So these come in different densities and
Yes.
they come in different thicknesses.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
How do I know what to choose for my boat?
Usually you would want to ask somebody, but I can tell you, if you tell me the make and model of the boat, what motors you're planning on putting on it, I can from
Guide
that
you.
point tell you, okay, this is what you're going to need.
Okay.
The majority of boats between 16 to 25, it's usually about 1.5 inches thickness. And that's this one right here. That's the 1.5 inch thickness
So
board.
you just need one of these boards and you're set.
One board and you're set.
I'm gonna put a link up here to obviously to FGCI so they can
Yeah.
see the cost of these, and I'll even put it up on the screen.
Yeah.
But so one of these you can do a transom.
You can do a transom
you're
with
set.
these, and you can actually use the other pieces to make, you know, stringer reinforcements or knees to your transom.
Yeah.
You can use those spare parts for that, for bulkheads and stuff.
So what else do you guys use for? Can somebody use for the transom? You see, you guys have marine grade plywood too, right?
You can use plywood. It's not as popular.
I don't recommend using
yeah.
plywood. Yeah.
And what they usually do is they'll get 2 sheets of 3/4 and resin them together to make a sheet of 1.5 inches.
Yeah, that's kind of what I did on the zebra skiff. So I had 2 pieces of 3/4 inch K-cell. I sandwich them together.
Yeah, and you can do that. You can do that. Let's go over here. So on the transom, we only offer it in the 25-pound density
For transoms.
For transoms. Now on the other sheets, like the 1 inch, 3/4, 1/2 inch, you can get these in a different density.
Yeah.
Starting off at 15-pound, 20-pound, and 25-pound density.
Okay.
Yep. And a lot of guys that are doing repair floors on a work boat or, you know, commercial boat, they can use a 15 to 20-pound 1/2 inch to replace their floors, and they do it one time and they'll never have to do it again because it has no water retention, and it'll hold up and
to the environment, and plus the screw retention is the best,
the screw
right?
retention is better, much better than
Yeah.
your nattaboard or your diab.
Okay. So we said marine grade plywood, we said the K-cell and the different thicknesses. What else? What other option? Because I used the port transom, the RJ, right?
The RJ is your next best transom, and that is a ceramic putty. I'll show you. Let me show you one here. Yeah, 6011. RJ. 6011 RJ.
Yeah. So you have the RJ.
The RJ, and that is a pourable ceramic transom. Great stuff. Very strong. Very can go up to 3-4 inches thickness without any issues. A little hard to drill after you put it on, but
it is.
But it's a great alternative to having to replace the whole transom if you have the ability to have the work area to pour it in. That is your better option.
Yeah, when I did both Grady Whites, that I did them with the poured transom, it was very easy. Well, now since I've done it, it's very easy just to clean everything out, pour, set it, forget it, and you're done.
And you're done.
Now doing the K-cell on the zebra skiff was a lot more work for me.
Yes.
I find it a little bit better for the DIY guy to maybe go the transom route, especially if it's a smaller boat.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I just think it's a little bit safer. You mix it the right way, you pour it in, and you're done. And you don't have to forget it. You don't have to think about it, and it's going to last forever.
Yeah.
So yeah, you said that
those are my top basic transom replacement
is with the pour transom.
The pour transom and the K-cell. If you have the ability to use the pour transom and have that, you're going to see it's a lot easier to get it done.
Yeah. When you're doing a small boat, you could get away with maybe like 2 little pails or something of this stuff, right? Like a little flats boat, you probably 1.5 pails or something. So you really can get a good deal on making a transom for fairly cheap.
Exactly.
Because they're charging what, $6,000 to get that done out there on the low?
Somewhere even higher than that.
Yeah, I mean, you save yourself some money. It's just, you just need the time. All right, so is there any other coin material we would use for the transom?
For the transom, no.
That's about it.
That's about it. That's what my recommendation would be. As far as flooring or decking goes, well, let's start with stringers.
Okay.
Stringers are, you know, a lot of people think it has to be a heavy product to make your stringers, and that is completely false.
Yeah,
You
my
can-
C-Crap doesn't have any coring material except foam in the stringers. It's just
Exactly. And
fiberglass.
some guys used to pour foam into
Yep.
pieces and just form their stringers that way.
Yeah.
Your 4-pound density, your 2-pound density are actually great substitutes to yes.
I've always thought, and this is because I'm not educated, and that's what you're teaching me all these things. I always thought that the stringers needed to be something very hard and rigid to keep the boat, right?
Not necessarily. I mean, if you're talking about a speedboat, then yeah, we're talking different materials. But for a replacement on a floor, on a basic center console, your 4-pound density is more than enough. Easy to form because this is really easy to cut.
Easy to sand.
Easy
if
to
you need
sand,
to form it.
and yeah, exactly. And most of the time you encapsulate that.
Yeah.
You know, you're going over 2 or 3 times with some glass, and that's what's actually giving you the strength. The forming would be just done with the stringers and the bulkheads.
Now that hard, rigid piece, like a piece of wood on the hull, a hard spot on the hull, right? You could get cracking from that, right?
Absolutely.
Because you want a boat to flex.
Exactly.
Because boats do flex.
All boats flex. Yeah, all boats flex.
When you have something too rigid, you can
Correct.
crack.
Correct.
Okay.
So you know, and if you do have any water entrapment in that wood stringer, it's just a matter of time before that boat starts getting heavier and heavier, and next thing you know, you have no strength in your floor.
So you said the stringers, you can use a foam like this.
Yeah.
You could use the K-Cell if you wanted to.
You could.
It's overkill.
You could. It's a little overkill, in my opinion.
And it's more expensive.
It's a little bit more expensive. Not necessary, but there are guys out there that are putting,
They want to build tanks.
they want to build. They put a 300 on an 18-footer and want to do, in those cases, yeah, you might want to go and step up to the K-Cell for that.
So you could use marine grade plywood, and you guys have that. You could use the K-Cell, but you really want to be using the foam for stringers and things like that.
Correct.
So same thing for like the bulkheads and the knees. You can use that as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, when it comes to the decking, depending on the size of the boat, depending on what you're bolting on, if you're going to be putting a T-top and you're going to be putting a live well leaning post in there, all that stuff is heavy and can create movement in the boat. So you really want to decide what you want to use, especially in those areas, especially if you're doing a heavy T-top that's got a crow's nest. You want to make sure that whatever it's bolted to is going to have some kind of backing and it's going to hold, because you don't want to lose your T-top offshore. So the flooring,
I have some of these at home, I think.
do you?
I think it's these that I have, or maybe
So these are called this is the diab sheets, and it's basically just a PVC foam. The Vinicel H60 is my recommendation for floors. It's also easy to cut out. So when you're cutting your pattern, do require on the back side at least 1 or 2 laminates of glass.
And we're going to talk about laminates. We're going to go inside after we check out all this stuff. And we're going to talk about all the different resins and glass that you can use.
So you basically cut your pattern out. You're going to laminate your bottom, and then you're going to lay it on top of your stringers. You're going to glue that down with a bonding agent. The FC8 bonding agent is one of my favorites. And then you're going to do your laminates right on top.
Got it. Okay, cool. So you have, this is the Vinicel H60.
Yep.
Now, how thick should a flooring be? Because look,
good question, man. That's a really good question. It all depends on the size of the boat as well. Going back to a smaller boat, you can go anywhere from 3/8 to 3/4 thickness. I usually, in about a 16-footer, I usually tell people about 1/2 inch or 5/8.
That's what mine is 1/2 inch for the zebra scope.
1/2 inch is probably the most popular for that size boat. Once you get into a little bit bigger boats, then you're going to go to a little bit thicker, 3/4. When they make it all the way up to 1.5 inch, which is really overkill. Most of the time, it'll be a 3/4, about this thickness right here.
Got it.
Yep. And the reason I do prefer the Divinycell over any other product as a floor material is because of the PVC blends that are inside these boards. Any epoxy, any resins will penetrate a lot better, have a better adhering properties to make this stick, bond, and not
Got it.
delaminate.
We'll talk about that when we get inside, because I wanted to ask you like about hot coats and how to do all that stuff just when I do my project. And so we'll ask about that when we go inside. So what else can we use for flooring and things like that? It's that.
Your honeycomb is a popular one here. Of course, I always tell people if you're going to be bolting down to it, there's no screw retention to this. So you really need to either put some kind of backing plate, aluminum backing plate, or piece of K-cell or
That's
something.
exactly what I was going to ask you. So can I put a backing in here and then screw to that?
And screw to that. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yep. But this is a great lightweight. So if your objective is to make your boat lighter and have the floor a good floor, this is a great alternative to that.
Nice. I didn't even think about that though, but once you said it, a backing plate or something. That's
most guys use aluminum, They'll laminate a piece of aluminum on the backside where they know they're going to be bolting stuff to, leaning posts or anything, and that way they have something to bolt onto.
Cool.
This is called a PET.
Is this like PVC board?
Like a PVC board.
But it's not the same PVC that you get at Home Depot.
No, it's not. So the one you get at Home Depot, if you put any epoxy resin,
it's gonna melt
it could deform because when it starts exotherming, it reaches a certain temperature. It could deform your PVC.
Got it.
So it's not the same. No,
not the same.
No.
PVC board from Home Depot is not the same.
Not the same. No, sir.
I think you gave me some of this foam. This is a foam that you would use.
That's a regular polyurethane board, and that's been used in the market for
bulkheads, things like that.
Bulkheads, stringers, coolers, like we talked about.
Okay.
Yep.
Nice.
And balsa. Which is,
oh man, we forgot about balsa. Yeah, balsa.
So balsa's
people still use that stuff?
They still use it mostly in repairs or when they're building a new mold. They don't want to. They don't. The balsa is light and yet gives you the strength.
Yeah.
So
it's super light. Yeah.
Super light. So a lot of guys that are repairing old cabin boats, they'll run into
sailboats and things.
Sailboats and old cabin boats. They run into that issue where they've got rotted balsa on
and they just want to repair it.
They just want to repair it. This is your alternative for that.
Got it.
And it's been around for the market many years. It does work. That's why we still offer it.
Yeah. Wow.
Great for tooling too. If you're making a mold, you're making a thing, you don't want to spend the extra money. This is a good 20-30% savings.
Yeah, true. And then that mold is not going to get in water, so it's never going to really rot. I get that. Okay, I get it. Yeah. That's understandable.
Yeah.
Any other coring materials, Laz?
Well, there's a couple other materials that you can think about for coring, which is called a mat line. Let me show you.
Okay.
Mat line, and this is mostly for coring hulls. Just to give it that extra thickness. Right here.
Oh, I've seen these before. The last time we did a walkthrough.
Yeah. So this is offered in a 1 millimeter, 2 millimeter, 3 millimeter, and 4 millimeter thickness, and it is a great product for coring hulls to reduce print through. It does soak a little bit of resin, so it will drink a little bit of your resin and epoxy. But when it's cured, it is hard. It's really hard, and it makes a great foundation for the profile, the end profile of the boat.
I have a question about that. So my zebra skiff, I noticed that when they laid the floor in, right? At one part they use a bunch of putty, like thick, right? And then when I look at the chine underneath, that hard spot created a crack. So I ground out all that putty and went down to the original glass.
Okay.
And I want to strengthen that area.
Yeah.
I want to maybe lay a layer of fiberglass. Can I use this stuff?
Yeah.
Is that something? Is that where I would use something like that to reinforce that area?
If in the hull, yeah, absolutely. Okay. You can use it. I would probably recommend an easier product, which would be If you're trying to get a real good thickness, would be like the structural putty
Okay.
that has fiberglass already in it, and you can go pretty thick. You can go 1 inch, you know, almost 2 inches thick with that stuff.
Okay.
And
So this is for like where you see like the inside of a hole that's already been glassed. You want to reinforce an area, you lay that sheet in there and you start
laminate.
soaking it with.
So it's actually a type of coring.
Yeah. So it's like a coring, but you don't need to lay fiberglass over it. It just sits just like that.
You do, well, they do lay fiberglass over it. Yeah, they do sandwich it in, just like a coring.
Just like a coring material.
Just like a coring material. You do lay your you know, glass in between.
That's cool.
I was trying to see if I saw a smaller roll of this that's open, but this is called Trevera. Right there, Trevera core.
Got it.
And this was used it's used in a lot of different applications, but
It almost looks like insulation, like
it is.
Yeah.
It is. And when it does soak a lot of resin as well, but what the real neat thing about the Trevera is that it has great screw retention.
Really?
Yeah. So a lot of manufacturers buy this, and they'll lay a strip around their rub rail area where they know they're going to be screwing a rub rail. This is the stuff that they use. Just because they know it has great screw retention.
Yeah, those are the little details that these companies are, at least the good ones are using.
Yeah. And this comes in different thicknesses also, a 2-inch thickness, which a lot of manufacturers order.
Yeah, I had no idea about this stuff.
Yeah.
That's cool. Oh, and also guys, if you want to see all the stuff that they have, and this warehouse use, we did a walkthrough with Laz where we went over pretty much everything in this place.
Almost, right?
So I'm gonna put the link up here so you guys can click on that, and at the end of this video, that video will pop up so you guys can see, because Laz has a wealth of knowledge. He went through every single thing in this place, so you're gonna want to check that out.
Yeah.
So Laz, we talked about all the coring material, right? So now, what else do we need? Because we have the material, but now we got to bond it, right? We got to bond it, we got to glass it, and where do I start? I don't know anything. What do I do?
Well, you're gonna start off with thinking, am I gonna epoxy this, or am I gonna use polyester resin, or am I gonna use vinyl ester resin? You know, am I gonna try to infuse it? Those are all questions you're gonna ask yourself. The most popular is the polyester. A lot of guys
more flexible, right? I mean,
it's flexible. It's
flexible in that you can use gel coat, and it's a little bit easier to use.
It is. It's still one of the most popular. If you know your application to a boat that is going to be living in the water, of course you're going to use a vinyl ester because it has the highest corrosive-free chemicals resistant than any other resin out there on the market. How are you going to lay the stuff up with fiberglass?
Yeah, but let's go inside. We're going to see all the different types of glass, and we'll go over some of the resins, because there's so many different options. And when I first started, I didn't know anything, and it's a little overwhelming. You guys got all the fiberglass stuff, so you want to do maybe let's talk about the transom, right? So we talked about the transom, we talked about foreign stringers.
Transom.
What type of glass are we going to use, and what's the difference? Because all this looks the same to me. Yeah, as you got this is some thick stuff here.
This is really thick stuff, right? So this is a product that's really popular for infusion. I don't really want to go in that right now.
Yeah, we don't need to do that.
So let's start with the basics. So this is called a chop strand mat, and this one's a 3/4 ounce chop strand mat. And usually I can tell it's a 3/4 because I can see my hand underneath it. Once you go to 1.5 ounces, which is a little bit thicker, you will not be able to see your hand behind it.
Now this stuff is not structural, right?
It does have some little bit of structure. Yeah, because you still have fiberglass in here, so it can be structural. I've got guys that make small molds, and they'll just use a couple of layers of these, and it gives them the strength they need.
But if we're doing a string, we're doing stringers, or we're doing a transom.
Yeah, then this is a great in between. It helps make your product finish in a smooth manner.
So I had a question, Laz, because I did zebra skiff transom.
Right.
And I bonded the 2 layers of 3/4 inch together. You told me to use a mat in between.
Yes.
Right? Why would I use a mat in between versus a putty? Or I could,
Well, actually the mat will give you a cleaner, smaller surface. If you try to use a putty, you don't know the thickness that you're going to actually end up with.
Got it.
So I usually tell people just a 3/4 ounce mat in between, and it's really just for strength to keep it together, and it will keep it together. But that's all you really need.
Now, when I glued those two pieces to the actual skin of the transom, we used the actual the
FC8 putty.
Yeah, the FCA putty. Why would I use that in that case?
Now you're talking about a different thickness in materials. So
Okay.
your thickness varies from one end to the other end.
Got it.
So you want to make sure you're using a product that can
Makes
cover
sense.
that thickness.
Yeah, the transom is going to have its little waves, and it's going to have its
You're going to have a
imperfections.
hole, a dinghy, or whatever.
Yep.
So those thicknesses need to make sure that they're full strength across the board, because they might be strong, thin, but when
And you can't get that with a mat.
you can't get that with
You
a
can't
mat.
get with the mat. Got it. Okay.
You
that
can get
makes
close,
sense.
but not there.
Especially for a transom where you need the strength all across.
Correct.
So, and this is also more for like a finisher, right? So
that's it's a great finishing product, and that's what I usually tell people.
This isn't 1708.
This is actually a 1700.
1700. So it doesn't have the mat.
It
back
doesn't
here.
have the mat.
Epoxy?
Epoxy's great. Infusion, great. So 1700 is no binders in it. When they glue a 3/4 ounce mat to the back of this, it becomes a 1708. The 08 meaning the 3/4 ounce that's glued to the back. They use a binder to put this together. Sometimes the binders create a problem where you can't laminate through it. There's no strength holding that binder. When you wet it out, it might look like it's not wet completely. It is, but the binder's holding it in place.
Got it.
So the 1700 is great for infusion, great for epoxies. There's no binder in it, it's all stitched, so it works really good for that. So 2408, meaning it's 24 ounces every 12 inches. The 08, meaning the chop strand mat on the back, is a 3/4 ounce chop strand mat on the back. That's the significance of the 08. The 24, meaning 24 ounces on every 12-inch square. And this one here is a stitch, so you can see the stitching in it. So
now I know that some of these, how do the strands run? Is it 90 degrees on these?
yeah, well, that's a good question. This one here is actually a 090, meaning that the lines will only run in a 90 degree. They do have a plus and minus 45, which will look like this. And this one here, your stitching are running in a both 45, a minus, and a plus 45. In the industry, they found that mixing these two 090s and a 1708, putting them together, gives you the perfect strength, the perfect thickness. You have flexibility and strength. So
yeah, I was going to ask you that. I mean, if you mix these two up, you have the ultimate.
The ultimate repair. So back in the day, they used to use a lot of the woven, which works great. Sucks a lot of resin. Sucks a lot of resin, and it is not a great profile.
Yeah, it looks. All my old Grady has that crap everywhere.
Yeah,
it's
you
ugly.
see exactly.
Yeah.
So print through is a nightmare with this stuff. Once they went to this, it eliminated a lot of that print through.
So Laz, on my transom, right? I already glued the case cell in. Everything's good. Now I have to laminate the outside, right, to really tie it into the rest of the boat. I have 1708. Is that sufficient for my transom? And how many layers should I be putting on that?
Are you talking on the inside?
Yeah, on the inside of the transom that goes to the hole and the bottom of the hole. Yeah.
So if it's something that's not visible, you can get away with putting this and eliminating 2 or 3 steps.
Okay.
But what I prefer is mixing the 1708 with an 1808 or with a 2408. All these products here work really good, especially when you're mixing the both. When you're using a combination of both glass, it gives you a little bit of both worlds. Not only that, but when you finish the profile, you finish it off with some just regular chop strand mat, and it'll give you a really nice surface to gel coat and give you
it just looks cleaner.
It looks cleaner,
and
nicer presentation.
How many layers should I be putting? 3, 4?
You should be using depending on the model, because if I tell somebody 3, I put it on my boat with twin engines and an engine fell off. So depending on the size of the boat, for example, your zebra skiff, I would probably go with 2 layers of 17, 2 layers of 18 and some ounce and maybe an ounce and a half or two
Wow.
just to finish it off.
I mean, that's going to be bulletproof.
It's going to be bulletproof. You're
Same
not
thing for my Seacraft too? Should I be
Yeah,
around
yeah,
the same?
yeah, about the same.
So
as
you're
the
talking
Seacraft.
about 4 or 5 layers, mixing and matching.
Mixing and
now,
matching.
what if I just have 1708? Is that okay too?
It is. You might want to go with an extra one just at the end.
So like 6 layers.
Yeah, like 6 layers. And of course, laminating over each layer.
You're putting
You're laminating one. You come to with the next one. You come over that one.
Yeah.
At least 2 or 3
so
inches.
smaller to bigger.
Smaller to bigger.
And the reason for that, Laz, is because if one of those fails, then the other ones are
the
still
other
there.
one will be
But if you
correct.
lay big and the smaller ones on top, once that bottom one fails, they all go.
They all go. Correct.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, so we talked about laminating up the transom. We talked about the layers.
Yep.
So let's talk about the string. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say the stringers. The
stringers.
The same concept. Something that you don't really see in a boat is the stringers. So something like this, which is like 18-ounce woven, is a great substitute for that. You're not going to have to go and put 6 layers of glass on there. You can get away with maybe 2 layers of this, and then I always prefer the chop strand mat at the end just to cover it up. Gives it a good finish, locks everything together.
So when we're talking on my boat, like let's say the Seacraft, we're talking 6 layers total of let's say 1708. I can get away with maybe 3 or 4 of woven.
Correct.
Oh, okay. All right. I got it. All right, cool.
And
so
of course, the ounce and a half chop strand mat in between, because it does lock it all together. It really
because
does.
you can't just put woven over
You can.
one. You can.
You can. Yeah. You
But it
absolutely
binds
can,
better with
one of my tricks is an ounce and a half.
ounce and a half in
Use
between.
that ounce and a half because it
Okay,
helps.
cool. So the stringers, we're doing it the same. We're using the
1708,
1808,
and some ounce and a half.
and some ounce and a half mixed up in there. Now the floor, right? You told me earlier it was you laminate the bottom of the floor first.
Correct.
Flip it over, put it in the boat, right?
Yep. And then laminate on
And then
top.
laminate on top. Why do you do it that way?
Well, you're creating strength in the board when you do it that way. You're adding glass on the bottom, your core, and then glass. So you're sandwiching this core. The more glass you put, the stronger it's going to get. That's basically what you need is this strength.
And how many layers are we putting on the bottom?
On the bottom of the core, you want to sandwich it. It does 2 things. It gives you the strength, because if you get a piece of a PVC board and you just lay it on top of your boat and you lay some glass on top of that boat, well, that bottom there's some give. So you could have flexible issues in the future, and your moisture as well too. So adding that glass on the bottom is giving you 2 things. It's giving you strength, and it keeps the moisture from getting into it. Which helps a lot.
So what, 2 or 3 layers for that bottom?
Me too. 2 to 3, depending on the size of the boat, depending on how big the sheet is. Usually on the smaller boats, it's like 1 and an ounce and a half, and then your glass on top, which is usually double that.
Really?
Double, yeah. So if you're using
3 or
2
4.
layers on the bottom, you're gonna think about using about 4 layers on the top.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, so we covered that, and the same thing. We're using 17. We could use 1708. We can use 1808. Same thing with the mat and all that.
Same thing.
Now, how are we setting that stuff in? We have a special putty that we use for that, right?
Yeah.
What putty is that?
Well, we have FCA. Come through here. Come through here. This is the FCA. Yeah, this is the FCA bonding putty, and this is our own lightweight bonding putty, and this is great for tabbing. If you're tabbing the deck to the boat already, it gives you plenty of working time, about 35-minute working time. So ideal for coring, bedding, decking. It's a great product for bonding any kind of coring to your product.
Now I would put this, like for example, on my boat, I have the stringers. They're already encased. I would lay a bead of this on there.
Yes.
And I would lay a bead on the outside and
Correct.
place the deck on there with some weight.
Yep.
Okay.
And that's all you're gonna need.
That's it.
And you can go, you can add fiberglass strand to it if you're going to use it in a real thick form, like or anything over 3/4 of an inch.
Okay.
You can add just regular chopped glass
to make it even stronger.
Yep, to make it even stronger. It'll help you out a lot. We do carry some structural putties that the 270 structural putty.
And that can work as well.
Yep, and this could work as well. It does kick off a little bit faster.
Yep.
But you can go, real thick with it and not have an issue because it is high fiber strands inside of it. And there is, super bond or the.
So like you said, we use the putty to bond. You could use this super bond.
This is an epoxy super bond adhesive, so it has got the thick, the viscosity of Vaseline, so it's easy to work with. Great for wood, to bond wood, to paint, to fill. It can be pigmented, can be painted over. Just an overall great product. One of our oldest products that we've been making. And it's just a workhorse. It doesn't stop, and a lot of guys use it for so many different applications.
Can we add chop strand to this too if we wanted to?
You can. If you're working on something a little bit thicker that you want to bond, and you need it to be, it's got a certain thickness, you can add fiberglass chop strand. You can also add Cabasil to make it even thicker. You can add fumed silica.
Yeah, here's all the flock and all that stuff. Yeah.
So this is the chopped glass.
Yeah.
You can add mill fiber to it if you're going to need something that's thin but strength. You can add your mill fibers to it. You can add your chopped glass if you're going thick, and then your fumed silica if you need the product to be actual thicker. There's also smaller chop strands, which is glass microspheres, mini fibers. There's so many different things you can add to the resin to make your own thickness, make your own putty. Yeah. The pumice is usually used for non-skid.
Non-skid?
Yep. And they carry it in a fine, a medium, and a coarse. Courses usually have heavy traffic areas.
Commercial boats.
Commercial boats. A lot of big commercial dive boats use the heavy. They like it because it's not slippery.
Sweet. Now, so we talked about the fiberglass. We talked about the structural putties. What about the resins? What do we use? Because you said we can use epoxies. There's polyester resins, right?
Vinyl ester.
Vinyl ester resin. Then you have boatyard resin.
Correct.
There's so many. What do I use? Like, what's the DIY guy going to use, and what can they get away with in different scenarios?
Well, if they're concerned about pricing, the boatyard is our most popular one. It is a great resin. It is an NSR, meaning it is a non-spec resin. Basically, the working time could vary with this resin. If you want to upgrade, this is the low profile resin. And this one here gives you about 35-minute working time. It is a spec resin. Low profile, all it means is it's low styrene levels in it.
You can use this for the transom if you wanted to. You can use it for the stringers, the decks. This is fine for laminating.
Yes.
Okay.
This resin does require you to come back after a short time, sand, to add an extra bond. If you're going from bond to bond to bond, when you're laminating and you want to do it, one
right
after
away.
the other. The other resins here, the Ortho 100% GP hand layup resin. These resins have a tendency to stay tacky longer, and that's on purpose because they know that you're going to do another coat. You're going to do.
Is it days?
No, hours.
Hours.
Hours, yeah. Unfortunately, days it'll be already tack free.
And then this is like your
your
big
vinyl
one.
ester is it's the highest corrosive-free resin on the market right now. It is a vinyl ester. It's what's recommended for any boats that live in the water. Any repairs on a boat that is under the water line should definitely be repaired with a vinyl ester resin. And that is going to give you the best profile, the best strength.
It's also very expensive too.
It's
the highest quality, right?
But when you start using it, you know why it's
Yeah.
very expensive. It has a great profile. It works really good. Great working time. And a lot of guys that come back and buy it again is because they used it and they realized that it does work.
Got it. Awesome.
Yeah.
And then you said epoxy. So your epoxies are.
Our epoxies are. This is our laminating epoxy and our standard epoxy base. The non-corrosive would be the standard epoxy is our biggest non-corrosive. The difference is our laminating epoxy, you can see
Yeah, it's a little bit.
This one
It's
here,
not as viscous. This is super viscous.
super
yeah.
viscous. So if you're laminating with fiberglass, this is what you want to use. You're laminating epoxy, and a lot of people ask me, "Well, where's the B side? Where's the B side?" Well, the B side you can use 1-to-1, you can use 2-to-1, 3-to-1, 4-to-1, 5-to-1. They all respond to the A side differently. My particular favorite is the 1-to-1 because it gives you a little bit more working time. Doesn't kick off as fast. It's something that works, that I find has this both strength and working time. If you're looking for something a little bit more flexible, then you would go to a 2-to-1 or a 3-to-1, and so on and so on. So they all perform differently, but they all can work together.
So the age-old question of epoxy versus polyester resin. Who wins? Why is one better than the other, or is it?
It's a matter of preference.
Matter of
Matter of preference. You know, a long time ago they used to do the surfboards all in polyester, and then they found out that the epoxies would float better and had just as much strength as the regular polyesters. Lighter, stronger. So yeah, epoxies sometimes do that.
In some applications.
In some applications they do that.
Is it more expensive?
Typically,
or is it right in the middle, close to the
you
same?
know, it used to be way more expensive, but today's polyesters are just as expensive, so they're matching. They're getting close.
But you also have to consider that if you're using this, you have to stick with this for the rest of your build.
Absolutely.
Whereas if you use polyester
Polyester?
resins, you could come back over it and use epoxy for certain things,
If
right?
you do a mechanical bond, yes.
Right.
So yeah.
So you have like sand and
not
you know,
doing a chemical bond,
Yeah.
a mechanical bond. You can
Right.
you can.
But you
go
can't do
over
it the other way around.
Right.
Right.
Correct.
So once you go epoxy, that's it. Everything's got to
That's
be.
it. Stick with epoxy. There's an age-old question: is can I gel coat over use polyester gel coat over epoxy? If it's sand and prepared correctly, you can.
Really?
Yep, absolutely, absolutely.
That'll
And
be a
these
good
were-
little project video to do because there's so much debate about that.
Yeah, there is a lot of debate, and there was a lot of competitors out there that tried it, and they found out it does work.
Oh, okay.
If it's prepared correctly. If you have any shiny spots or anything like that, you're just not going to have any bonding adhering.
So if you guys have any questions, man, you could hit up FGCI. I'm going to put their info as always in the description down
Yep.
here.
And-
Laz is always busy, so you might not get Laz, but everybody here is super knowledgeable with all the things,
Absolutely.
with everything here. Check them out. I'm going to put their website on there, and we'll see you next week.
You got it.